My friends, today we have around 40 minutes of useless and obscure facts, information, deep lore, and theories about the 2000 video game 007 The World Is Not Enough, or Twine. Indeed, the other James Bond game released on Nintendo 64, as well as PlayStation and Game Boy Color, but we're talking about the N64 version in this video. I've compiled this list of facts and oddities in iceberg format, so let's just get into it, and the rest will speak for itself. Courier 9. Courier is the first stage in The World Is Not Enough, and is the site of perhaps its most famous game-breaking glitch. On the stage, you're intended to play through a bank situation, retrieving money, erasing security footage, and all sorts of other spy stuff. However, unlike GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, Twine gives you new objectives as you progress through the stage, intending to be more immersive this way. Conventionally, after you retrieve Objective A, your equipment, you're supposed to progress through a security checkpoint, watch a cutscene, and get handed a bunch of new objectives. However, when starting the mission, the only objectives are A. Retrieve appointment card, and B. Avoid civilian casualties. By using your watch stunner on a civilian, the mission seemingly fails and you will not progress or be given any other objectives. However, the objective doesn't really fail as the civilian was only stunned and not eliminated. You can simply then retrieve the appointment card in your equipment, walk out of the bank, and because you completed both objectives you've been given, the game thinks you've beaten the level. This can be done in 9 seconds, with dozens of players having achieved the basic score. So yeah, the first level is so broken that you can skip all the objectives and beat it in 9 seconds on all 3 difficulties, and that's Courier 9. Bond is here. This is simply a voice line that guards have when they see you. The game has far fewer voice lines than, say, Perfect Dark, and so through the course of a playthrough, you're sure to hear "Bond is here" hundreds, if not thousands of times. Pen Grenade. The game's second mission, King's Ransom, presents you with a scenario that the MI6 headquarters are under attack, and thus you must protect key Bond allies like M and Moneypenny throughout the level. If you speak with Moneypenny, she will hand you a pen grenade.
Here, you better take this.
A somewhat useful item that can be used as you would expect. Masquerade Escape. The Masquerade stage has you infiltrate a nuclear test facility in Kazakhstan, posing as a nuclear scientist. About halfway through the stage, you get found out, and have to fight your way out of a pit, with seemingly no way to escape as a countdown timer ticks down, trapping you in, and destroying the facility in a blazing inferno. This is a part of the game where a lot of people got stuck, as it's pretty unclear how to escape this situation. And you know, games from this era didn't really give you hints on how to beat them. There are numerous questions about this part on game FAQs, like a good third of the questions ever asked about this game are specifically about this part. However, all you have to do is, first, use your watch grappler to target this section and pull yourself out of the pit, and then after you fight out a bit, you need to identify this yellow and black handle, use the jump mechanic to jump towards it, and you will get a dramatic cutscene showing you riding your way out of the level where you can then try to escape, finishing the stage. City of Walkways clips. City of Walkways is a 2-part stage roughly halfway through the game, where you're just running on boardwalks which are a part of a caviar hatchery on the Caspian Sea in Azerbaijan, owned or managed by your old friend Valentin Zhukovsky from GoldenEye. In my opinion, these are some of the more boring levels in the game, where you're constantly taking flak shots from guards from very far away through the fog and mist who you can barely see. Anyways, sometime around 2017, Mavelock discovered that you could clip out of bounds on the stage by stunning a guard in the right spot, and having his recovery movement push you through the fencing. A technique using this clip is used on City of Walkways Part 1 speedruns, resulting in you strafing along the pseudo-floor of the water and visually unloaded sections of boardwalk, instead of weaving through the labyrinthian interior of the Caviar facility. And this saves a good 20 or more seconds on a speedrun on all 3 difficulties of City of Walkways Part 1. 007 Health Bonus. The stage Underground Uprising presents you with a scenario where you must save some hostages and defuse an explosive device planted in the London Underground. Now the timer begins at like 6 minutes when you start the stage, or 5 on Double Agent, but if you get to the explosive and defuse it with exactly 0.007 seconds left, 007, R will communicate with you via radio and grant you full health and body armor. It took me many tries to actually get this to work, but it does. It's kind of a weird Easter egg because you'll almost always get there with way more time left, and defusing it with exactly 7 seconds has to be very uncommon. But hey, it's a cool little Easter egg they added, and it could be useful if you were playing Double Agent, had very low health, waited until 007 seconds left to finish defusing, and thus got the bonus replenished health to go on and safely finish the stage. No one speedruns Twine. It's natural to compare Twine with GoldenEye, as these are the 2 James Bond games on the Nintendo 64. And while GoldenEye is considered one of the greatest, most influential games of all time, Twine is, well, not. It's also natural to then compare or tie in Perfect Dark with GoldenEye, as it's considered the spiritual successor to GoldenEye. So I'll consider GoldenEye and Perfect Dark to be sort of cousin games of Twine. And while GoldenEye and Perfect Dark have a dedicated speedrunning scene with thousands of players having attempted world records over the decades, Twine does not, with only a few people having ever speedrun it seriously. Now it is worth mentioning that GoldenEye and Perfect Dark were developed by Rare, who have a legendary legacy of video games they created, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, while Twine was developed by Eurocom, a decent but less iconic developer. So this largely affected the varying outcomes and receptions of the games. In a video I released in 2018, I talked about how no one really speedruns Twine. I mean, we're talking single-digit speedrunners compared to the thousands who play GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. And in that video, I explained that Twine is just, not quite as good, as well as there being a game-breaking pausing glitch, which we will discuss a few times later on. But there's more to it than all that. I think the game requiring a memory pack to save progress rather than just saving the best times on the cartridge is another small obstacle, just one little thing that might have discouraged a few people from grinding for best times. The end screen doesn't provide as satisfying of a reveal of your time after a good run, having to scroll with C down, rather than the tension of pressing A on the completion end screen in GoldenEye, or the time just popping up at the end of a Perfect Dark run. And there's this boring loading screen you get at the end of each stage twice before you get to the end screen. Also, there are only 14 stages compared to GoldenEye and Perfect Dark having 20 each, and for one reason or another, the Elite.net speedrunning community never decided to host an official Twine rankings. These and more all contribute to the game being far less speedrun than its cousin games. We will get into the stories and lore of those who have speedrun the game in any serious regard later on in this video. Fall damage avoidance. So in Twine you can fall off ledges, something you couldn't really do in GoldenEye, but certainly can do in Perfect Dark. The thing is, unlike Perfect Dark where there's no fall damage, Twine does have fall damage, where you will pass away when falling from great heights. However, Twine has a feature that neither Perfect Dark nor GoldenEye had, jumping. You can jump by pressing up on the D-pad or up C, depending on your control style, and it can be a bit tricky reaching all the way over to the D-pad when strafing through the stage. But hey, if you time a jump at the last few frames of you falling from a great height, you can survive, as the game thinks you've landed from a basic jump height rather than a great distance. This technique is very useful and is featured prominently in speedruns of the game. Skyrail. One aspect that many agree is pretty good in Twine is its multiplayer, with there being way more scenarios, characters, and maps to play than GoldenEye. My favorite map to play from my childhood was Skyrail, a sort of skiing gondola map, where you can actually walk around on the high wires of the gondolas. Honestly, a lot of the maps are pretty cool, and it's surreal to play them since they have that sense of familiarity, yet also unusualness. Fire Skip and Doctor Skip. The second level, King's Ransom, is one of those stages where new objectives are given to you as the mission progresses. Double Agent has a total of 9 objectives, which is pretty insane and unusual, as players used to GoldenEye or Perfect Dark know missions usually cap out at 5 objectives. Now here's the thing, you can actually skip a couple of these objectives, which are given to you by allied police type officers in the MI6 building. By injuring or stunning them, you can prevent their text lines, which prompt the new objectives. You can prevent Objective G, Activate Sprinkler System, by injuring this fellow, though you'll then have to skip all these flaming areas of fire with very well timed precise jumps, which can be pretty difficult. Later on, you're intended to escort Dr. Warmflash to Mr. King, Objective I, but you can also skip this one by injuring this ally. These are of course used when speedrunning the stage on Double Agent.
Here, take this pin. It was the detonator.
Sir Robert.
Hidden Destroyed Monitor. One area of curiosity for many Twine players is this upper balcony on the first mission, Courier. There's no conventional way to access these balconies, so for many, wondering what was up here was a mystery that persisted throughout their entire childhood for decades. I was able to find some moon jump codes, which only worked on some stages while glitching out some other stages, but it did work on Courier and allowed me to explore the Courier balcony. But this only unlocked another mystery. Much of this area, outside of the eyesight from the main floor, is simply unloaded, uncoded void, blackness with nothing going on. There are a couple of rooms which you can enter, one is completely empty, but the other holds nothing but a destroyed monitor? This is extremely weird, and no one has ever explained why this is here, and in all likelihood, we'll never know who put it here or why. Uncanny NPCs. Take a look at this clip. Just look at how dead and unresponsive all the NPCs look. It's quite uncanny, and this thing is a marked departure from GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, where the NPCs are almost always moving around, patrolling, or even just swatting at flies and sneezing, which adds to the sort of immersion and reality of the game. Even in this scenario, these NPCs are allies or neutral characters, but in GoldenEye, scientists and civilians are kind of constantly moving, at least doing something to prevent it from being completely static. Now, not to dump on Eurocom, the developers of this game, but these sorts of details are certainly among the things that contribute to this game being considered less good overall than GoldenEye or Perfect Dark. Even combat with the enemies just feels less realistic, with fewer hitboxes and injury animations, less satisfying combat, giving the game a sort of flat feel, if not, dare I say, an unsettling aura. There are lots of reasons why the game isn't viewed as favorably as GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, and the sort of lack of animation or emotion from these seemingly dead-feeling NPCs is certainly one of those reasons. Night Watch Boxes. The Night Watch level is a stealth mission where one must creep around, tapping phones, disabling cameras, photographing various evidence, and not shooting any guards or being seen by a few specific henchmen. It's a pretty tense mission, and unfortunately, if you are caught by guards, the level fades out, failing, so it's hard to explore and take in all this surreal and liminal scenery. About halfway through the stage, there's this set of stacked boxes just begging you to jump on top of them. Now, as you get older and learn more about game development, it's very uncommon for things like this to be put into a game just for fun, without a purpose. like climbing up onto them for an objective or advantage of some kind. But these boxes genuinely seem to serve no purpose. Why are they here? Why are they stacked like this? You can't quite jump onto this roof from these boxes, so like, what's the point? Did they originally serve some purpose that got later removed or obsoleted? Perhaps we'll never know. BoPeep's Underground Uprising Agent Untied World Record. So I made a video about this record a few years ago, and everything about it still holds true to this day, but here's a quick recap. In 2018, a speedrunner by the name of BoPeep, who had no prior involvement with the small Twine speedrunning community, nor GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, nor any speedrunning community really, submitted 9 world records to the Twine rankings on speedrun.com. Most of them were untied world records. BoPeep was someone who valued their privacy online deeply, and thus little is known about them or what motivated them to speedrun Twine, nor how they got so good, playing in the shadows and backrooms without much community involvement. This sort of thing is possible, but it is also quite rare to see. While most of BoPeep's records have since been beaten or tied, Underground Uprising Agent 115 remains a 2-second untied and contains an incredibly lucky and fast bomb defuse, which is sort of the crux of the stage, and is what allowed him to get this 2-second untied here. Even now, 4 more years later, the record still stands. I mean, of course, the game doesn't have that much competition, but the record still stands as a 2-second untied nonetheless. Bosses lost vids. So look, I know I've made a fair deal in the past about how no one speedruns this game, owing to a few issues like the game just not being all that great, pause buffering and pause abuse affecting the in-game timer, and things of that nature. And we will revisit that all a little bit later. But once upon a time, around the year 2004, Big Boss Man was the champion of GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, the dual champion, ranked as per the Elite.net world rankings in these games. Now, the Elite never had an official The World Is Not Enough rankings for whatever reason. However, a community member hosted a sort of private rankings page listing the world records in the same style as the GoldenEye Perfect Dark rankings, just for fun. At some point through history, after having done what he needed to do in GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, Boss decided to speedrun Twine. And of course, him being Boss, quickly obtained all 42 of Twine's world records. Now, these weren't super competitive with only a handful of people having played and speedran the game, but still, he had gotten a share, a tie, or untieds on all 42 of the records. Boss even had videos of most of these runs made. Now, in this area, Boss would record his runs on VHS and then mail the tapes to someone with a PCI internal capture card and recording software, which was not very common and was pretty technically advanced at the time. I asked Boss about this recently, and even he forgets who he sent these Twine runs to. But if one thing seems for sure, it's that the videos are no longer anywhere to be found online. Complete lost media. The way it worked back then is that someone would make the videos and they would circulate the community through an AIM get file folder or by someone uploading them to someone's private FTP server. And then a handful of community members would watch and share the runs around. And so many people probably did download and watch these runs at some point. Even I feel like I have a vague recollection of watching some Boss Twine runs. But I'm also aware that memory can be flawed and fallible. Either way, they don't seem to be around anymore, which is kind of unfortunate because it would be cool to watch these for nostalgia's sake and to see some early game strategies as used around 2004 when the game was only a few years old. Henrik, aka Weister, and a few others have since beaten all of Boss's times, but it is still a very unfortunate example of some speedrunning lost media and some deep lore in Twine and the Elite community. It almost makes me wonder, what if the Elite did add in an official Twine rankings at some point? The game likely would have been way more seriously played, competed, and archived just by nature of those ranking systems being so well organized and fun to see your name listed with your initials beside a cool world record. Alas, so much lost potential here. Double Bond Cinema. On the Turncoat stage, if you put on the widescreen video setting and watch the full intro cutscene, you will get a few frames like this, where two Bonds appear at the same time. It's just the way the game is moving and displaying the Bond model from moment to moment, preparing to put him here in the next scene, and it doesn't happen when using standard screen, so hey, it's pretty funny.
The signal's coming from here.
Maiden's Tower.
Fallen Angel Boat. The stage Fallen Angel has this interesting harbor in which a conventional playthrough would see you exterminate this character, Bullion, and copy his fingerprint to gain access to an area later. There's even a trick where you can copy his fingerprint from the balcony above, which saves a good deal of time on a speedrun of the stage. But let's stop and smell the roses for a second. What are these boats? Can you get on them and explore? You know, that's the kind of thing people like to do these days in video games. Well, you can swim around the harbor. You can swim in this game, but there's no conventional way to access the boats. I've tried using moonjump codes on GameShark or EverDrive, but the codes are very finicky and only seem to work on a few levels, Fallen Angel not included. Instead, I just get weird texture glitches and soft locks or game crashes before I can make it out to the boat. There is this out of bounds clip that Twine speedrunner Mavelock has posted. It's a well-timed jump on top of a box, over the fence onto the outside edge of this overlook, and into a normally inaccessible section of the stage. He explores the out of bounds area around the harbor for a bit and then tries to land on the boat, but fails. Mavelock writes that you can get onto this boat this way using fall damage avoidance, but he just missed it in this video clip, and he's never posted a clip where he's been successful. My friends, does any clip exist online exploring either of these boats? Will anyone ever successfully record footage of themselves on this boat? Particularly the larger one I would love to see. What can be found here? I would love to explore, but unless I can learn to pull off Mavelock's out of bounds trick, it's unlikely I ever will. Bathing Man. So Twine has target times, just like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, in which you unlock cheats or rewards. The thing is, in Twine, most of these unlocks are for multiplayer skins, maps, and game modes, which is kinda crazy to think about now, given that makes up nearly the entirety of DLC in modern gaming. So maybe EA and Eurocom were truly influential in moving gaming culture in this era. Anyways, on the Turncoat stage, we run around downtown Istanbul while saving hostages and avoiding civilian casualties. One of these civilians is a woman wearing simply a towel. Bathing woman. She emerges from a bathhouse, and so it makes some sense contextually. Appearing nowhere on the stage, but appearing as a multiplayer skin is Bathing Man, a male equivalent to this NPC. This is pretty funny and cute, kinda like the inverse of how GoldenEye multiplayer has a female Moonraker and female Scientist skin, despite female versions of them not appearing in the main single-player levels. A big shoutouts to Grassloo for this one, who wanted me to include Bathing Man on this iceberg, and a thanks to him, as some of the footage you'll be seeing is of his amazing Double Agent playthrough on his channel. So of course you can check that out if you want to watch a no commentary video playthrough of Twine after this. Speaking of Grassloo, here's a bonus off-iceberg fact he shared with me. Baron Samdi's health regenerates in multiplayer, only if he's an AI bot, not a real player. Now, in order to check this, I first had to go and beat Meltdown on Secret Agent to unlock classic skins, and then I queued in a couple of games against Baron Samdi with, of course, Bathing Man and Bathing Woman on my team. And yeah, it totally did seem like Baron Samdi was pretty hard to kill with likely regenerating health. Now, there's no real health bar, so you can't really check it, but who am I to doubt Grassloo? Probably the guy with the most knowledge about GoldenEye overall, and certainly when it comes to multiplayer. I mean, when it comes to Twine, who else really knows anything? So there you go. Baron Samdi's regenerating multiplayer AI bot health. Multiplayer restrictions. So among the game's various multiplayer options and game setups, you'll notice that every character or skin is classified into good or evil. You cannot set up a match where good players fight other good players. You can only do good versus evil or evil versus evil. So you can't have, say, James Bond fighting against M and Moneypenny and Christmas Jones. But why is this? I've got to give credit to YouTuber Lancey on this one, whose video about Twine I watched when researching this video, where he mentions this multiplayer fact, also pondering why this is. But I think I know why, and this is just my guess, my opinion, my interpretation of it all, but here we go. So you see, the rights holders to the James Bond IP, Danjaq LLC, were actually never too happy about the Bond games being shooters, with a lot of killing and shootin' tootin' and all that stuff. I remember speaking with GoldenEye developer Dr. Doak many years ago, and the impression I got was that the people at Danjaq were very surprised at the kind of game that GoldenEye turned out to be, with so much shooting and death and destruction. They definitely did not like the fact that James Bond could pass away in the gameplay, and so in all likelihood they really would not have liked Bond shooting M in multiplayer. They probably hated Bond shooting Natalia in GoldenEye. And so these multiplayer restrictions in Twine were put in place by the developers, Eurocom, to appease the IP holders at Danjaq and get their blessing to license the game. Danjaq's fuss and muss also explains why it's been so hard to get re-releases or even many new good Bond games made, because again, my interpretation and understanding is that the James Bond IP owners just really don't like the whole video game aspect of it all. Alas, it is what it is. Danjaq has recently been in the news giving more creative control to Amazon as far as the James Bond IP goes, at least in the movies, so could this lead to being a good thing as far as James Bond video games go? I guess time will tell. Name censorship. So when you play multiplayer, you can name your character something. However, there is some basic censorship in names you can type out on the keyboard. Typing out one of these forbidden words will revert your name to player 1 or player 2 or whatever. I can definitely say as a young goose, I had a fair giggle playing around typing various words, especially, parts of human anatomy, to see what would or would not be censored. It's one of the first games I can remember this being a thing. bcks Cold Reception Vids. So this is a story I've told many years ago in one of my best fireside stories ever, but it's been a long time, so let's revisit it more briefly. Back in the mid-2000s, when the privately hosted Twine rankings existed, as I previously mentioned when discussing Boss's Lost Vids, a few other players decided to participate in speedrunning the game. One of these was a fellow by the username of bcks. Now, bcks was an interesting fellow. He was really a journeyman speedrunner, not the most skilled player, but he worked hard and used the techniques available to him, and managed to climb into the top 10 of the GoldenEye World Rankings, really reaching his peak ability and getting a few tied world records along the way. bcks at some point turned to Twine, and wanted to use a controversial strategy, which, largely in part to Twine speedrunning being very disorganized and not something taken very seriously at that point, had not yet been banned or regulated. Indeed, bcks was going to use the pause buffering strategy, which is particularly effective in Twine, as the first frame of unpause does not cause the in-game timer to move forward, although you and your actions do continue moving forward. Thus one could in theory pause buffer frame by frame, possibly any level in the game to save tons of time, if not even achieving times towards 1 or 0 seconds. Now this has never been definitively tested by tool-assisted speedrunners as a proof of concept, but that's the theory. A really good stage to use and abuse this pause buffering technique is Cold Reception, a skiing stage in which you are automatically moving downhill. So as long as you pause buffer decently, you'll save time while cruising downhill, and the timer doesn't update for the first frame of movement between pauses. Bix used this technique to set new records on Cold Reception. The conventional records today are 2:16 across the 3 difficulties, but Bix achieved times of 2:10 Agent, 2:08 Secret Agent, and 2:17 Double Agent. However, no videos were made at the time because in this era, only a few people had capture cards to digitize their gameplay footage, and Bix was not one of these people with a capture card. So in 2006, Bix chose to mail VHS recordings of his run to another fellow named Mouser Scribe, who was known for having high-quality video recordings at the time, but was maybe not the most reliable guy who would regularly disappear from the elite speedrunning community for months, if not years at a time, regularly. Bix was very excited to show these Twine videos when they got made, especially the Cold Reception ones, and I remember him telling me personally that his Cold Reception runs took 2 hours real time of pause buffering for 2 minutes of gameplay. But the years passed, and Mouser never made videos from the VHS tapes that Bix had sent him. Eventually, in 2014, so 8 years after Bix originally mailed the tapes, Mouser came clean, confessing that he had been dealing with anger issues over the years, and one night in a fit of rage, destroyed nearly everything in his room, including some VHS tapes of other Eliters and GoldenEye speedrunners sent for Mouser to capture. Now here's the thing, and what I got wrong in my previous video. Mouser claims he found all of Bix's VHS tapes, managing to capture them and uploading them into a magnet torrent, which he then shared with the community. The thing is, this was so shocking and overwhelming for everybody that only a few people downloaded the entire torrent, and none of them really remember finding any Twine videos in that torrent. So it's possible that the Twine stuff never got captured and got destroyed, or it's possible that just no one really paid any attention to this and cared to look for it 8 years later. I've asked around and a few people have uploaded some of the stuff that was on these tapes, certainly no Twine stuff, and now that this whole incident has been 11 years ago, no one still has the files lying around. Even if the Twine and Cold Reception videos were there to begin with, which is still an uncertainty. To this date, the records are still 2:16 across the board by Weister and Mavelock, so Bix's time of 2:08 Secret Agent is particularly interesting, and even though the pause abuse would eventually be banned by the small group of players who do speedrun Twine, it would still be amazing to see the run for what it is. All these years later, nearly 20 years after Bix played the runs, and more than 10 years after Mouser recovered some footage, still no one has ever set out to do what Bix did, even as a proof of concept, pause buffering down the Cold Reception stage just to see what such a run would look like. Not even a tool-assisted speedrunner. I kinda hope someone does it, maybe I'll have to do it myself, because it would be really cool to see someone reenact Bix's runs of 2:10 and 2:08 with pause abuse on Cold Reception after all these years, just to give an idea of what his lost videos might have looked like all that time ago. Midnight Departure Fence Jump. Midnight Departure is a long and sprawling stage where you must pursue a character Davidoff through the winding forest and then board a plane, which, as the story goes, takes you to the next level, Masquerade. Fair enough. The ending portion of the stage takes place in a decommissioned airstrip where you must speak to an air traffic controller who clears the plane to land. The thing is, the quickest way to get to the airstrip is not one of the conventional paths through the woods, but rather over this fence, requiring a very well-timed jump and turn to clear it and gain access to the airstrip area. This jump saves somewhere around 15 seconds on the stage, so it's a significant skip. It's a very tricky jump, I've personally never hit it, and Weister needed 6 attempts to clear it on his Agent Any% full game speedrun. That being said, the single level world records on the stage, which are held by Weister on Agent and Double Agent and Mavelock on Secret Agent, indeed hit it on the first try. It's probably one of the more advanced speedrun tricks in the game, at least among known tricks. With an underplayed game like this, who knows how many speedrunning tricks might still be out there waiting to be discovered. Night Watch Theoretical X-Ray Skip. On the stealth mission Night Watch, you're told not to leave your room in the villa, but of course you do to go about and complete the mission. You are given as one of your gadgets some X-ray glasses, and you can't help but notice that the end of the mission is just through the other side of the wall from the room where you start the stage. Now there's absolutely nothing technical to support this idea, but could there be a skip that would get you to the end of the stage instantly? Now here's the catch. If you look at a map of the stage overhead, there are objectives exactly across the other end of the stage. The villa is almost like a circular donut where you do a full lap, coming back to where you start. So perhaps a skip from the beginning to the end of the stage wouldn't be as useful as we hope. But then again, maybe it would be, with the reverse route being faster through the stage, or at least on some difficulties. Either way, it's just one of those things that when you notice it for the first time, you can't help but wonder, what if there were a way to get through and such a skip were possible, clipping through the wall or the locked door towards the end of the stage? And what possibilities might it offer if someone ever found a way to do it? Subterranea and other cut levels. Subterranea is a stage that was cut at some point in the game's production. There's a video from nearly 20 years ago on the channel of Subdrag showing footage of the stage which he accessed using various GameShark codes. So the stage is still deep in the code of the game and semi-playable, or at least explorable. Subdrag was very well known in the early 2000s as a hacker and code debugger of Nintendo 64 games, particularly GoldenEye, and this Subterranea footage is the only Twine footage on his channel. Interestingly, the beginning of the level has you fall down into an open pit, passing away, so Subdrag writes that you must also have on a moon jump code in order to land safely and thus explore the stage, beyond just falling down the first few seconds and passing away. You probably could also survive with fall damage avoidance, but either way. The GameShark codes can be so finicky and buggy in this game that it could be difficult to get the game or level to launch anyways. There are a few more cut stages, which we can read about on the cutting room floor, and at least some gameplay or exploration is visible for some of these, like this footage from Ben C. Castle Thane, Crate Yard, and Frigate are the other cut stages, though it seems like these ones are probably multiplayer stages, whereas Subterranea may have been a single player stage. Some point out it looks like the ending cutscene of Fallen Angel, so it may still be accessible for that reason, or it may have been a mission that leads into the next one. The cutting room floor writes, judging by the level's start at the top of the tower where Fallen Angel left off, the mission was probably intended to be placed between Fallen Angel and A Sinking Feeling. For whatever reason, it wasn't finished and was left out of the game. This might also explain why the mission select screen has an uneven grid of 14 missions instead of 15, which would make 3 even rows of 5 missions for each line. So perhaps this is why the devs added so much unused stuff in the lower reaches of Subterranea. It was likely going to be used as its own level at some point, but scrapped late in production. Alas. Courier 8. My friends, is Courier 8 possible? Well, this might sound like a troll entry to close the iceberg, but I can assure you it is not exactly. Here's some food for thought. For many years, Perfect Dark's first level, Defection Agent, was beatable in 6 seconds. Many wondered for years and years if 5 were possible, with most believing it was not, but it happened in 2010 by legendary speedrunner Ilu. The point being, sometimes these unbeatable and maxed records do end up getting beaten. In April 2020, Mavlock uploaded this run to his YouTube channel, Courier Agent 8, a new remarkable world record. Or was it? Indeed, using the pause abuse trick, he was able to score a time of 8 seconds visible on the end screen. It's a cool proof of concept, and the exact date of upload, April 1st, 2020, gives more insight into what Mavlock was doing here. But fool me not. Will Courier 8 ever be possible for real, without the pause buffering glitch? While it certainly seems unlikely and impossible today, I'm never one to count this sort of thing out. My friends, will Twine's speedrunning see a renaissance in the aftermath of this video? Will some intrepid gamer lower every world record across the game's 42 levels and difficulties? Is Courier 8 possible? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thanks to those supporting on Patreon. Stay true, and I will see you all in the next stream, video, or fireside.